Hello. So I have a new haircut, but also I wanted to talk to you about those books that when you first read them, you think these are so good. And then at some point, I don't know, years down the line, you think, okay, I would love to be able to read this again, like I've never read anything before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a coffee and I'm going to talk to you about 5 books that I wish I could read from the start again because it was so good. Now, I'm hoping things don't get too loud in here because realistically that is a loud machine, my kettle. So we're hoping not. I'm hoping with the mic it should help kind of get rid of that, but we don't know. Might just hear that going on. But as I said, there are books that when you read them, you think that's such a fantastic book. I would love to be able to read that again. And so when you then, I don't know, years down the line think, what's one book that I would recommend to anybody? And these are kind of those books in that genre you think that had such a fantastic twist, or it had such an emotional story, or it had such a fantastic plot, or something happened that you thought, no, that was absolutely fantastic. So I'm not necessarily saying these are my 5 favorite books of all time. I'm just saying they are books that I would love to read again because it's something about them just blew me away. Something about them either started something for me, whether it was they introduced me to a new genre, whether it was a massive shock that happened, a twist, that sort of thing, or whether, as I said, it was just a book that when I finished it, I had to take time because it was so emotional. Something like that, something that left me blown away. So make a coffee with me and we'll get into these, as I said, 5 books that I think fit this list of books I would love to read for the first time again. Okay, so I'm on the floor because this scream's running out of places to film, doesn't it? But I thought I'd sit down for this one. A little bit more comfortable, a little bit more cozy. We'll see how we get on with it. The first book I want to talk about is The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. Now, this is a book that I think I read like years ago, and I'm talking like when I was in my teens, so maybe 10, 15 years ago. No, he said 20 years ago. I'm not that old. And then I reread it again about 2 or 3 years ago. I remember sitting in the garden reading it, and I forgot how fun it is. The Da Vinci Code and kind of all of the Dan Brown novels, if you read them on a very surface level, are just fun books. They're all about mystery, they're all about codes, they're all about solving things, they're all about these kind of alternative conspiracy theories of historical elements. They're absolutely fascinating and they're so fun. The books themselves are very much written in a way where it makes you want to keep reading. All of the chapters have cliffhangers on them. What I did find is there was a lot of kind of not actually giving you any information until quite late on, and then that piece of information would only open up more questions, which is what the Da Vinci Code is about. The Da Vinci Code is actually technically the second book in the series, but has gone on to become one of the most famous books of all time and one of the best selling books of all time. I think I heard somewhere this has sold more than the Holy Bible. I don't know if that's true, but it sounds like it could be true because of the conspiracy theories behind everything in this book. So if you don't know anything about the Robert Langdon series, it's a series where basically Robert Langdon is, I don't really know what it is, he knows history, and he goes around and he solves these codes, these things that have been left throughout history. Imagine kind of, I don't know if you've done like Indiana Jones or played the Uncharted games, these things where hundreds of years ago, very important people we understand now left very specific clues in depths of places, sometimes in plain sight, sometimes in caves, this sort of stuff. And Robert Langdon goes and explores them and unravels mysteries and kind of asks questions about things that we've all known for years that he's now like, yeah, well, did you ever consider that might not be the case? And that dude might actually be a woman, and this thing means this, and all sorts of stuff. It's fascinating. It's actually really interesting that Dan Brown has managed to come up with a lot of this stuff. How much of this, I don't know, has gone on to become actual, okay, yeah, there's something going on here. I think what's quite interesting about these books is, as I said, the chapters are kind of short. They're really, really filled with kind of plot, suspense, like revealings of things really quickly. And what's even more fun is this book then got banned in some places because of all the kind of holy aspects and the religious aspects and the ideas that these things that people have understood for years may not actually be true, and it's unbelievably interesting. It's so cool. Really, really fun book. Yes, it has its plot holes. Yes, there's the elements of it where you think he's literally just dragging you along right until the end, and then it's not even that satisfying, but it's such a fun ride doing so. So if you've not yet read any of the Robert Langdon series, you can start at the start. I can't quite remember what the first one in the series is called. If not, you can start at the Da Vinci Code and it doesn't make any difference. Either way, I wish I could read this again for the first time because it's just such a great time to read. And I just remember like not being able to do anything else because I just wanted to keep reading it. I've scooched over a little bit for the next one because the next one I don't actually have the physical copy of. I have the sequels of, but I've given the first one to a friend I lent it to them. They've had it for ages now, so I need to get that back. It's Dissolution by C.J. Sampson. The reason I loved this book so much, and I wish I could read it again, is because I think it's the book that kind of got me into historical fiction. There may have been other books before it that kind of intrigued me about historical fiction, and I think I remember reading something about the plague when I was first getting into kind of Kindle Unlimited, some kind of smaller book. But the book by C.J. Sampson, Dissolution, is the first one where I thought, no, actually, I'm really interested in historical fiction, especially historical fiction set hundreds of years ago. So if you didn't know, this is set around Henry VIII, and it's focused on a lawyer at the time who they did like detective work. He's a hunchback, and Dissolution starts off the series of essentially, in a similar vein, I guess, to Da Vinci Code, the government kind of come to him with these conspiracies, and like a lot of it's about the church and a lot of it's about kind of things that shouldn't be going on, and he has to solve them. And it's quite an interesting story. There's so many kind of, as I said, kind of conspiracy things going on within these books, which is really fun. And it just does feel gritty. It feels like you're reading something set around 400-500 years ago. It does feel like England. It feels, as I said, earthy. It feels religious. It feels historical. It's brilliant. And at the same time, you've got a fantastic character dynamic going on. So as the books progress, different characters are introduced. That makes it more interesting as well. But also there's just an element of it where you think, yeah, okay, I'm really interested in what these characters are actually doing and what these people are doing and their lives, their personal lives, their interactions with each other, their troubles. And I think that's something that only develops further in the series as well, in how well it does it. As I said, this book just got me into historical fiction. And now I've gone on to try and read so much more historical fiction. Kristin Hannah is one of my favourites. Taylor Jenkins Reid's. I know hers aren't actually based on real things like Henry VIII or anything like that, but hers are set in the past, which was interesting, and hers are only like the 1980s. Bernard Cornwell, I've read his as well. And so yeah, C.J. Sampson got me into the historical genre fiction, thanks to, as I said, Dissolution and the characters in there, the Shard Lake series. R.I.P. to C.J. Sampson. I believe he died just before, even literally a couple of days, I think, before the Shard Lake series came out. I don't think the Shard Lake series was too good, but no reflection on him, and I think his books are fantastic. One of them is actually that I'm trying to get to now in the series called Tombland, which is set very, very near to where I live, actually. There's a place in Norwich called Tombland, which is essentially just like a little area. I'm not even sure where it starts and where it ends, but it's essentially like some bars and some churches and abbeys and things now, all kind of clustered together, and it's where kind of like the lively hub of Norwich arguably is. And it's also where the Ket's Rebellion kind of happened and a lot of that sort of stuff. So that's why it's based in that book. Really fun, really interesting, fantastic. If you're into historical fiction and never read a C.J. Sampson, please give him a go. Dissolution, I wouldn't argue, is the best of the series. Keep going if it's not your fate, if you don't absolutely love it, because they do get better, the characters get better, the stories get more interesting. But fantastic introduction, and I absolutely loved it. So yeah, that's Dissolution by C.J. Sampson. The next one I have may be controversial within some audiences, but we cannot deny the influence of Harry Potter. J.K. Rowling, we've all got opinions on J.K. Rowling's opinions, but I don't think we need to go into that. The book itself, you cannot deny, is generational and defining of so many people's experience of reading. For so many people, Harry Potter was the first time they ever enjoyed reading. For so many people, it's when they started to feel like a community. For so many people, it's gone on to be something that they hold on to when times are dark. They just watch the films or read the books or meet friends or play the game or anything like this, and it's expanded into one of the biggest IPs the world has ever seen. Being able to read the first book again would be sensational. I don't know if at the time I thought, wow, this was amazing, I love this, is fantastic. I don't know if the first book is as stunning as people may think the whole idea of Harry Potter is now. The whole idea of Harry Potter is very much the bigger encompassed series, the characters, the world that's been built out from it, all of that sort of stuff. So is the first book the best one? I don't know, but I wish I could start reading the Harry Potter series like I'd never read it ever before. One thing I do always think about with that though is that this is aimed to a slightly younger audience. I did reread these recently a couple of years ago, and I did some reviews over on my blogs of them, and I thought they were fantastic. This first one is probably the weakest in terms of the books, but they just get better and better. And then the fourth one I think is where they peaked, and the last couple are absolutely fantastic as well. Imagine being able to read the start of the series that is going to go on to become one of the biggest things the world has ever seen, let alone books or film or anything like that. It's just sensational. This is a very weird copy I've got. There's a few of them. You can buy them on Amazon. There's a whole block series of this, and I've got the series, and I do want to reread them. I think I got right up to like the second to last book and then didn't read that one or something in the end when I did my reread. But I might want to do a reread at some point, and I know rereading the Harry Potter series for me is always such a joy just because I know so much of it already. I know so much of how it's going to go, so there's not part of my brain that I have to activate and concentrate, but I enjoy my journey the whole time I'm reading it. That's Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. That's the third book in this list of books I wish I could read for the first time again. So let's get on to the fourth. So these next two books I've included in this list because they are books that left an emotional imprint on me. They are books that had me either stopping because I needed to stop because the things were getting emotional, or left me thinking about them for ages. The first one is Carla Tosaini's The Thousand Splendid Suns, or A Thousand Splendid Suns even. It's an absolutely fantastic book. If you've never read it, I'm just going to try and get that in the light a bit better. If you've never read it, I would 100% recommend it. Let me read the back a little bit for you. Mariam is only 15 when she is sent to Kabul to marry Rashid. Nearly 2 decades later, a friendship grows between Mariam and a local teenager, Layla, as strong as the ties between mother and daughter. When the Taliban take over, life becomes a desperate struggle against starvation, brutality and fear. Yet love can move a person to act in unexpected ways and lead them to overcome the most daunting obstacles with a startling heroism. It's an incredibly powerful book. It's an incredibly sad book. It's a book that I think anytime you've seen in my videos where I've mentioned this, I talk about the time where I was sitting out in my garden. I specifically remember I was due to go off and do something that day. And I was sitting out in my garden reading this, and my partner said, right, we need to think about leaving soon. And I was like, I need to keep reading this book. And then I got to a point where I was like, holy crap, I'm feeling quite emotional. Maybe I'll stop now because it's making me feel sad. And that's how powerful this book is. His writing is phenomenal. His ability to write characters, the relationship between the characters built upon the emotion you then feel as a result of the actions that then take place. It's unbelievable. It really, really is. There's literally like 1 or 2 lines in this that I read that I was like, oh my God, wow, okay. Brilliant, fantastic, that's amazing. It's fantastic, it really, really is. And as I said, this is one of those books that just left such an emotional imprint on me, something that I will always recommend to people. One of those books, and I think emotions are often what decide whether I like a book or not. If I can't get emotionally invested in anything in the book, no matter how good it was in terms of, I don't know, script or the idea of it or anything like that, I just can't bring myself to go to people, it was stunning, fantastic. This book, I can do that with. This book is a book that I will always recommend to people. If people say to me, I want to cry in a book, I'm like, read that, because that's the closest I've ever got to crying in a book. That's The Thousand Splendid Suns by Carla Tosaini, and that's the 4th book on this list of books that I wish I could read again, because yes, nobody likes crying, but I don't feel that major emotional connection with many books. And I'm not saying I have a connection with any events that go on in here or the characters or anything I've experienced. I live in England. I've had a very privileged kind of upbringing in terms of I've never had anything but safety. This is the complete opposite of that. And therefore, being able to kind of read about it and understand that my life has been so great and there are things, and this is, yes, it's fiction, but it's based on the experiences and possible realistic experiences of people that experienced this horrible war and were involved in this country and all sort of stuff. So yeah, if you've not read it and you want to feel sad one day, I could not recommend this one more. And then finally, the book that's probably featured in most of my videos, or the most amount of videos on my channel, is One Day by David Nicholls. Now, this is a book that I will talk about until my dying days. It's a book that lived with me for so long after I finished it, and is the reason that I've included it on this list. One Day by David Nicholls focuses on Emma and Dexter. I think it starts in 1988. They are at graduation together. It then focuses on and tells the story of their lives as they grow older into their 20s and into their 30s and on further, and their kind of ongoing on and off relationship with one another and interest in one another, and their constant confusion as to where they are with each other. It's one of the most mature tellings of romance and love, and two people who are magnetized to each other despite being opposite. She's a very kind of shy, intelligent, work-focused person. He's much higher living, constantly seeking the next biggest thing sort of person. And yet, whenever they come together, they seem perfectly fit together. And it's brilliant. It's such a fantastic story. It makes you feel, especially as a British person, it's in England, and a lot of the stuff happens in England in the 1980s and 90s. If you were growing up then or in the early noughties, you really feel a lot of this kind of resonates with you as well in terms of how we used to live and things like this. And there's a moment that I talk about in all of my videos, and I will continue to talk about in this book, that I could not believe David Nicholls wrote into it. And I cannot, to this day, articulate how that made me feel and how shocked I was. I remember reading it and just having to put the book down. The chapter finished, I had to put the book down, and go, I cannot believe he's just done that. I don't know what I want, if I want to continue reading it. And at the same time, I absolutely must continue reading it. So that's One Day by David Nichols. I wish I could read it again because I wish I could hit that moment in the book where I had all these feels for these two characters, and then that kind of sudden shock moment happened where things were just kind of flipped on their head. And yeah, it's unbelievable. I hope that's not a spoiler for anybody. I hope it's not something where you think, oh my gosh, something big is going to happen and it's going to ruin me if it does happen. I just hope that it means that you will try and read One Day by David Nichols, because it genuinely is fantastic. If you're not a book reader, if you have managed to find my channel and you've subscribed, but you're not a book reader, then the Netflix adaptation is also fantastic, and it does do the same thing this book does in give you that kind of emotional connection between the two characters who were fantastic in it, and also kind of give you that shock element that happened as well in the book. That's One Day by David Nichols, and that's the 5th book on my list of books that I wish I could read for the first time again. So those are the books that I wish I could read for the first time again. They are all fantastic. They've all got their different reasons. There's probably another 5 I could think of. So if you like this video, let me know down below and I could think of 5 more that I wish I could read for the first time. As I said at the start of this video, these aren't necessarily the best books I've ever read. They are all fantastic because they all left some sort of imprint on me, but they aren't the best I've ever read. One Day possibly is. There are some fantastic, they're all bangers, not gonna lie, they're all great, but that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is they did something to me. They either shook me, or they impressed me, or they dragged me along like the Da Vinci Code, or they just had me having such a great time that I feel like if I read these for the first time again, it'd be such fun. There's no kind of technology out there that allows me to do this, is there? I don't know. Either way, the difficult element of it is I wouldn't know I'd want to read them at the time. I would just, you know, coincidentally pick it up and be like, that was a great time. Either way, rambling. Thank you so much for watching this far into the video. If you've got this far, you may as well drop a like. If you've not yet subscribed, just subscribe at this point, because it just wins for everybody. If you've not yet gone and watched every single one of my videos in like 150 different tabs on your computer for days on end, that's something that would benefit me as well. Either way, if I don't see you till the next video, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.